Hi and welcome to the Geek Legion of Doom. This is a horror movie review and I'll be having a look at the movie Grave Halloween, also known as The Last Halloween. So this is a sci-fi original TV movie and it basically is meant to take place in Japan, but it was actually filmed in Canada, and it kind of follows the story of a group of either American or Canadian students, I'm guessing, and they're kind of obviously out in Japan studying something or other. For some reason they're studying film, it appears. I don't know whether in Japan if they needed to do that, but there you go. Anyway, so one of them is kind of, I guess, the lead sort of protagonist, I suppose, is this girl called, I think it's Mariko, and she's meant to be Japanese in origin. We sort of see a few flashbacks of, you know, her mother, who is clearly sort of Japanese, and when she's a little girl, but she looks like she's not Japanese herself. It kind of maybe looks like she may have some kind of Asian heritage, but she certainly looks more Caucasian than anything else, I have to say. But hey, I'm nitpicking before I even tell you the plot here. But anyway, so she's trying to find out a kind of a mystery sort of revolving around her kind of birth mother. She was sort of given up for adoption at an early age, and you know, she's kind of, her mother's sort of committed suicide in this kind of woodland area. And she kind of wants to sort of try and find out a little bit more about the sort of circumstances of her mother's sort of death and what kind of led her there. And she's sort of going along with this sort of film documentary, all these sort of like sort of teenagers kind of making a documentary. And apparently there's this forest in Japan, and I believe it actually may not actually exist, where basically pretty much everyone goes to commit suicide. So it's kind of this like infamous sort of forest where there's apparently it's like the #1 suicide spot in the world, according to this movie. Whether that's true, I don't actually know, but apparently this is a real place where people go to commit suicide in Japan. So there you go. So naturally, this obviously is going to be sort of filled with spirits and stuff, and I guess these sort of group of college kids are sort of trying to find evidence of kind of supernatural activity or what have you. Of course, this happens around the Halloween time of year. So our intrepid group of explorers basically sort of go out into the forest. And it's a very sort of eerie atmosphere, basically, and they kind of stumble across this sort of seemingly kindly sort of Japanese gentleman who sort of, you know, warns them they shouldn't sort of disturb anything, and they kind of see various police sort of take away these sort of bodies that sort of being committed suicide, we would imagine. And there's so much so that there's permanently police here picking up all these damn bodies and sort of carting them off, with there's so many people that kind of commit suicide here. And it's not long after the group sort of starts sort of seeing apparitions and kind of ghostly sightings, and you know, they all get sort of separated. Of course, there's a sort of group of other sort of like lads who have followed them there and decided to play a prank on them, and one of them have actually sort of stolen something from one of these sort of suicide sites, and this causes angers the spirits and they sort of start seeking revenge, and they sort of separate the kind of all the kind of like these kids and sort of pick them off one by one in sort of various sort of ghostly means. And it really kind of leads to sort of Mariko kind of, or Mariko, whatever her name is, trying to sort of confront what's happened with her mother. I kind of won't go into too much about what it actually, you know, all means here in this review, but suffice to say, she kind of finds out the sort of truth about her mother, and it's not what she had thought. So that will give you a basic plot premise. So what's the film like? Well, it's not too bad for a sci-fi original film, I've got to say. I thought it had a good atmosphere. It's not a particularly scary movie, but these kind of TV movies rarely are. But it did have a, you know, a reasonable sort of level of sort of spookiness in there, and there are some quite sort of spooky shots. There's a, you know, you see a couple of shots where you just sort of see things at the corner of your eye, and it's very much this stylized and these kind of the J horrors with the kind of, you know, the sort of Japanese woman with the kind of long flowing black hair and what have you. So it's kind of very much influenced by that sort of sub-genre, I suppose. And basically, the end of the movie almost turned into like a bit of a zombie film, really. But nevertheless, it's not a particularly gory movie, and it was reasonably well acted. It's fairly sort of typical for a kind of TV movie. All the kids act like typical sort of like teenagers that you've seen in countless of these sort of horror movies, and there's real sort of a cliche element there to it. And you know, maybe you have a bit of a question why, if this sort of main character is meant to be sort of Japanese, why isn't she Japanese? You know, why is she basically looking like she's kind of mixed race at the very least? Anyway, that is really a nitpick, I suppose, but it kind of did annoy me that they can't just have a kind of a Japanese central character in a kind of a American/Canadian film. Anyway, so, but it wasn't too bad, I have to say. I thought there was kind of a spooky atmosphere. It maybe drags a little bit, I have to say. Kind of, you spend a lot of time in the woods. I mean, 90% of this film is actually in the woods. So it's kind of a little bit samey, I have to say, because all you're sort of seeing is trees and trees. There's kind of a little bit at the beginning of the movie where you're sort of in the college and what have you. But it does start to drag a little bit, even though it's not a particularly long movie, because you're kind of just sort of seeing the same scenery and you're sort of seeing, you know, these kind of, all these sort of like teenagers just sort of trot off and do their own thing ultimately. It does get a little bit samey until you sort of get towards the end, until you sort of really understand what's happening. But it's not a bad TV movie, I have to say. I have certainly seen worse, particularly from the Sci-Fi Channel. So I'm going to give this one a 6.5 out of 10. Not too bad. What are your thoughts on it? Leave me a comment. I look forward to seeing you soon. Bye for now.